Some years ago, actually, I was giving talks to Omega. Marianne Kelly was the head of Omega, she recently passed, amazing lady, leaves a huge legacy. And she said, you know, Dave, I want you to start talking about dreams. And I protested because the only thing I knew about dreams was what I'd learned from the Sangomas. I'd hardly read a book on dreams. And she said something that was kind of a backhanded compliment. She said, dreams are much too important to be relegated to experts. So that's why I'm talking up here. So I haven't got a PhD in psychotherapy, and I haven't read many books on dreams. And what I'm going to give you is a completely different approach, a very user-friendly approach to dreams, so that anybody can really interpret your dreams. You know, you don't have to have a PhD to interpret your dreams. Somebody actually came to me today, just before, and related a dream from his grandmother. I'm pretty much telling him to come to the talk, which is kind of interesting. So this is what we're going to be talking about today, and we'll just go ahead. I'm going to actually talk for quite a bit, and we will have a break. We'll do a meditation, and then at the end of the talk, we're not going to have more talking. We're going to really have questions and share dreams and do something that's a little bit more interactive and experiential. So what we're talking about is the ancestors and the dream time, spirit guides. And this is what we're going to be dealing with, a whole bunch of different subjects we're going to be cruising through. As usual, there'll be a lot of information, but try and get the gestalt of the whole thing rather than worry about the details. We're going to talk about different paradigms, dream paradigms, what the Sangomas taught me, an official dream, which means it's coming from the spirit world, which is a scripted dream. The ancestors are scripting it for you, or the spirit guides. I'm using these two words interchangeably, spirit guides and ancestors. These are often instructions or they're information. Distinguishing between visits and dreams, general cosmology and universal truths about dreams, especially relating to what I'm talking about, and the pitfalls of dream interpretation, the tricksters, hackers who get into your dreams, pollution of your dreams, which can be very real. And then we'll talk about sort of how it fits with a computer model and how maybe ancestors copy and paste things into our psyche, both in awake time and in dream time. Try and help you classify your own dreams. And finally, some interpretation and how important interpretation is, because interpretation will lead to the actualization of what's going on. So that's the plan for today. So this is a very important principle, that a psychological orientation that explains dreams as scripted only by the subconscious makes dream interpretation very limited, I would say very limited. So, you know, the subconscious is one whole aspect, and I would even suggest to you that the spirit guides can script your unconscious, just like they can script other parts of your psyche. So if you're just looking at dreams from the subconscious point of view, I think you're going to be missing a lot of the picture. And a further caveat to that, a purely psychological interpretation of dreams discounts a guiding non-local spirit source, discounts a guiding non-local spirit source that can be nurtured and can be personal. So non-local means that your ancestors are not localized in space and time. So they can give you information regarding a place you're going to visit because they can be there at the same time they're in Santa Barbara. They can give you information with regard to your karmic life book because they know what your destiny is. They're in touch with parallel universes on the other side and what your past lives have been. They are there to really guide and help us. So they're tremendously useful. Regardless of whether they're educated or not, they have a huge advantage over us on the sentient plane. And the other important thing about this is that, unlike the subconscious, it can be nurtured and it can be personal. And we'll talk about how to nurture it. And personal means that they often love you. These are your guides that are in your immediate past life, but also in remote past lives as well. They're your mothers and brothers and sisters and lovers from way, way back that loved you, and love is the juice that allows them to get across the veil between the worlds to come and help you. They may have been assigned to help you, but they will, of course, be very connected to you in order to get through to you. So in a sense, the ancestors are your app to the spirit world and to this non-local time-space thing. They, in a way, are like a cybernetic feedback, negative feedback system to guide you on the treasure hunt that is your destiny, that is your life. So they're there to keep you in line and give you a dream and nudge you and warn you when you're going too far, of course, what's called a cybernetic negative feedback system, kind of like the body works with the hormones. So these are the dream paradigms that I'm going to just talk very briefly about. The psychological, we're not going to be talking about the subconscious, although we're going to talk about this at the end of the year and how important imagination is in the subconscious. The Jungian, which talks about the collective unconscious, the archetypal world, I believe Jung was actually a shaman, frustrated shaman, who had to conform to his psychotherapeutic world, so he didn't seem too crazy, and he invented or made up words to try and make it sound scientific. But literally, I think he was doing shamanic work. And that's why a lot of the Jungian dream analysis is very, very good. Shamanic, which is probably the bulk of what I'm going to talk about, because I started to learn about it from the Sangomas initially. Many of us have looked about dream yoga. And I just want to mention this because dream yoga is for, I think, folks like Yogananda and Patanjali, enlightened beings who had a certain vibration and can penetrate into a much higher realm, the causal realm, as opposed to the lower vibrational realm that we connect with, which is the astral realm. So talking about dream yoga is very interesting, but in order to get into that whole thing, you have to sort of be in a vibration that's like putting you into the causal realm. And then what I'm going to be talking about, which I didn't, for want of a better word, is integrative, trying to integrate all of these, plus with an emphasis on the spirit world. Now, this is from the ancestors. You'll notice that there's no name at the bottom, and it sounds profound. It's probably from the ancestors, not from me. I haven't put it in quotation marks to distinguish it from those that have come from elsewhere. So this is what they said. Some living persons, through deliberate, intensely concentrated energy focus, can influence, trigger, and even sometimes invade another dream realm. This is not the same as a spirit guide scripting a dream. So what does that mean? The good guys can, and we're talking about live people now. You might have somebody who's overly attached to you, maybe is, say, crazily in love with you, who will intrude into your dreams, and you might actually be enticed into thinking this is going to be a relationship that's worth following, but it's coming more from their side than from your side. On the other hand, there may be witches and sorcerers, as well as healers, who can do the same thing for good. But the witches and sorcerers can come and intrude into your dreams and make them quite diabolical. And I remember when I first started up with my healing center in the far north of South Africa, my foreman, George, came to me and he said, the witches are going to come and visit you at night. And I thought, oh yeah. And they did, and it's not that much fun. So people can intrude in your dreams, but these are living people. We're going to be talking more about dead people. Concerning dreams, we pick up on the mental thoughts and strong energy vibration of others, especially those with whom we have a connection. Again, love or some affection or connection is the catalyst. Be it, in fact, fancy or wishfulness. What of such dreams are messages? What are insights? What are just plain viewings? What are hopes? What are fears? What are possibilities? What are realities? And what are actualities is for you to decide. So there are people that we are very connected to that will come into our dream time. This is why a mother will dream about her daughter going into labor 3,000 miles away, but she won't dream about her neighbor going into labor, even though she might know the neighbor. It's because of the connection. Now, many ancient sages have said that the dream time and death are exactly the same. They're just a different form of the same reality. And we've talked a bit about this in the death talk for those who've been there. But if you look at it, we go through death, we go into an intermediate stage, which is the astral realm, where we reconcile with our karma, and then we reincarnate or come back, unless we are a causal being, in which case we don't have to come back. And then we get reborn again. And the dreams are very similar. We go through, firstly, when we fall asleep, we go through a deep delta state, dream sleep. This breaks into REM sleep, much more active sleep. And this is when the ancestors are active. It's in the REM sleep stage, the early hours of the morning, that they can best penetrate. And then we awaken to a new day. So the dead and the living meet best in the astral when the veil between the worlds is most permeable, and that is in the astral stage of sleep. So if you're looking for your dreams, you're going to look in the early hours of the morning. For instance, I did my initiation. They would wake me up at 4 in the morning. I'd have to dance, and they would drum because the veil between the worlds is very, very more permeable at that time. So mostly the dead that we encounter, they are our guides, or they're reconciling with their karma in the astral. Now, I just want to talk about a dream practice when we start, because this is nothing esoteric. Everybody here can do what I'm talking about, but everybody here has to find their own unique way of receiving dreams and talking to their spirit guides. What I'm going to give you is my approach, which is general in principles, and I'm purposefully not going to talk too much about my own dreams, because your dreams will be very different, and I don't want to bias you or prejudice you. So the first thing is we're going to talk about the snake. The first thing is spiritual practice. The second and the third thing is also spiritual practice. You've got to have a good spiritual practice which will make your kundalini go up, rise, and it'll make your third eye open and will make the veil more permeable to you, or to all of us. So that's really important. I suggest you all set up an altar to your ancestors. You put on a white cloth, which is the color of the ancestors. Put their photos there, put their any little artifacts you have there, because a container, it's easier for them to come through a container, through a talisman, through a ring, through a walking stick, than it is just to come through you praying to them and asking them to come. Why that is, I don't know, but it's true. Put your dream journal there, then take it to bed when you go to sleep, you know. Your dream journal is your discourse with your ancestral spirits. Put their photos there, and don't put any dysfunctional ancestors there that you don't especially want to have around, you know. Only have the ones that you loved, and don't be put off by having strange ancestors, Tibetan or African or Native American, because like I say, we go in and out of different lifetimes and different cultures as well. Check in, if not every day, then regularly, you know, light a candle, light some incense. If you have a good dream, thank them. Gratitude is the ultimate form of prayer. And keep an ongoing conversation. It's all done through gratitude, through ritual, and through celebration. So if you're going to just starting off, you can even have a party for your ancestors. Invite them to your new way of thinking. Invite them into your dream journal. You know, make a meal for them, food they would like. You know, put out a plate of food and leave a chair open for them to visit, and start the process going. You have to ask to receive. Free will is the cosmic law, so they cannot interfere with you or in any way, unless, of course, you're in dire circumstances. Then they can break the rules of free will. Like, you know, you're driving down the freeway, and this is daytime, but in nighttime, and you'll hear a voice, don't do it, and you're going to turn into the left lane, and if you would have gotten taken out by a truck. So that's what they can do. They can save your life, but they can't come along and suggest things to you and tell you what to do unless you ask them. Your state of mind before sleep is absolutely critical. Be careful of terrible movies. Be careful of bad TV. It'll change your vibration, put you in a different astral realm, and you might hang out with beings you don't want to be hanging out with. If you can, avoid suppressants. Like if you want to dream, don't have wine that night. Try and avoid sleeping pills. You know, if you can, maybe not take antidepressants if possible. So this is from the Zohar that says sleep is an unripe fruit of death. So very much saying that, you know, sleep and death are very much the same. The process is the same. The yogis and the Buddhists say that's one way of learning a lot about death, is by visiting the astral in the dream time and seeing what it's like, and because we can get a rehearsal for what it's going to be like. And dreams are the unripe fruit of prophecy. So dreams can tell you things that are going to happen in the future. So one has to listen very, very carefully and keep a log. I'm going to start off with a meditation. As some of you know, I get these songs in my dreams. I often get 1 or 2 lines, and I know what they want me to say for the rest, so I usually make up the rest. And I thought we'd just do a meditation, and I'd read the words of the songs, and then let the song carry you into wherever it's going to go. Like I've said many times before, this is a different form of meditation. It's more an active imagination, trying to focus on one thing rather than trying to do a sensory withdrawal. So this is what came in the dream. It said, save your morning prayer for the nighttime, meaning that the time to pray is before you go to bed. Ask to receive. That's when you pray. But in the early morning, that's the time you must be very careful. Don't move in your bed. Don't reach for a glass of water. Just lie there if it's 3 o'clock in the morning or 4 o'clock in the morning, and just try and see what might have been the dream of the night. And then it's kind of like a butterfly. It's very evanescent. You've got to take your net and catch it and then put it in your dream journal, maybe some keywords, or if you like your iPhone, there's a recording device on your smartphone. You can record it if you like. And then once you've got it, go back to sleep or go to the bathroom or do whatever you have to do. But if you don't do that, you're going to miss a lot of the dreams. You have to, and I fail often myself, because frequently I'm just not thinking, and then I know that I lost the dream. So this is when the ancestors are around, and this is when they can come to you. They will guide you on your way and help you from day to day, sometimes just before the dawn, the early hours of the morning. Do not move in your bed, and you'll hear what they have said. Save your morning prayer for nighttime. That's when the spirits are around. Save your morning prayer for nighttime. That's when the ancestors are found. Ask and you will receive. Remember gratitude, please. You can't take this for granted. If somebody comes to you with a dream, go to your altar and say thank you. Free will is the law above, and so is love. So the ones that love you can come through best. Again, that's a repeat. And then the second one that I'm just going to play as well, we'll go from the one to the other in the meditation. This was the chant that came in the dream, which was Halulu Laila. Laila is actually Hebrew for dream, for nighttime. And some of the dreams sometimes come in foreign tongues that we'll talk about. Now, I don't know who Gishia is, but the words of the song were, Hey Gishia, I came in a dream. And then I developed further, Hey Gishia, I told you. Hey Gishia, you heard. It doesn't say you listened. It says you heard. Hey Gishia, you remembered. And then he's urging again, I told you. Hey Gishia, now see what happened. See what happened, I told you. So listen to your dreams. As we'll see, not all dreams are true. But if your dream shows your plane going down the next day, the one that you're supposed to fly to New York, cancel your flight, because, it may or may not be true, and you don't want to take the chance. So when you hear them, don't just hear them, listen to them, act on them. So we're going to do a little meditation, but first there's this caveat. Be warned that dreams speak not the way things have to be, but the way they will be unless action is taken. So there's no thing that cannot be changed. There's no thing that cannot be altered. Everything is fixable. So don't worry about if you have a terrible nightmare. It's just to tell you what not to do. So don't be scared by your dreams. So let's sit up straight and be relaxed. Take some deep breaths in and out. And full breaths. Expand your lungs, front to back, side to side, up to down. And relax your facial muscles and your forehead, your neck, your back, all the things that have tensed up over the course of the week. Just let go. And if you don't like the idea of the active imagination, just do any meditation you like, but use the music to help you. It might change it, the texture of it. And or follow the breath.
I came in a dream. Hey, Gishia, I came in a dream. Hey, Gishia, I told you. Hey, Gishia, I told you. Hey, Gishia, you heard. Hey, Gishia, you remembered. Hey, Gishia, I told you. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Hey, Gishia, now see what happened. Hey, Gishia, now see what happened. Hey, Gishia, I told you. Hey, Gishia, I told you. Hey, Gishia, hey, Gishia, hey, Gishia, hey, Gishia. Hallelujah, 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 Save your morning prayer for night time. That's when the spirits are around. Save your morning prayer for night time. That's when the ancestors are found. They will come to you in dreams. Tell you things you cannot see. They will guide you on your way and help you from day to day. Sometimes just before the dawn, the early hours of the morn, do not move in your bed, and you will hear what they have said. Save your morning prayer for night time. That's when the spirits are around. Save your morning prayer for night time. That's when the ancestors are found. Ask and you will receive. Remember gratitude, please. Free will is the law above, and so is love. Ask and you will receive. Remember gratitude, please. Free will is the law above, and so is love.
You can slowly come back and return to your normal breathing. And move around a little bit. So in reality, where I started off was learning divination bones during my initiation, because when you learn to interpret the bones, you basically are reading the waking dream that's somebody else's life. It's looking at the whole cosmology of a person's life. So when you can read those metaphors, I think that's why the Sangomas are so good at dream interpretation. Many of them can't read or write, but they'll nail down your dream exactly, because that's kind of what they're used to looking at is reading a dream on the mat. So psyche in the spirit world, who brings the big dream? The big dream is the word that Jung used for a really very, very, dream that you cannot forget. You know that it's something very, very important. And I want to just talk about some aspects of the spirit world and where it might be coming from. Firstly, we're not going to be talking about the psyche or the subconscious here, but clearly the subconscious is huge. And I'm not denigrating dream interpretation from the subconscious in any way. I just want to focus on this today. But I also believe that these guys here can influence the subconscious as well, as we'll see. And we're not going to be talking about the causal realm, although there may be folks in this audience that are getting dreams from angels or from enlightened beings. And usually that means that if you don't have the right vibration to get up there, you're not Yogananda, then they come down to visit you. They can do that as well. But you can get dreams from this realm. Most of these dreams that you're hearing here are channeled by Mary Ellen Kelly from the causal realm. She was an amazing channel who could actually put down a whole paragraph. I can kind of get one line, but I can also get a song. So we all have our own unique capabilities. So the spirit world is important to realize there's human and non-human spirits. And there's good spirits and there's bad spirits. And there's cosmic and terrestrial and water spirits. And there's mythical spirits that are not really mythical because, to many cultures, the fairies and the leprechauns and all those are real, but they become mythical. And then, of course, they're dark and they're light spirits, and we're going to be talking about that quite a bit. So there's a whole host of spirits, and there are your own ancestral spirits and what you might call foreign spirits that may have been ancestors way back or may not have been ancestors way back. For instance, the woman who throws the bones for me, my guide, is a black woman who was a Sangoma in a previous life. Did I have a previous life with her? I don't know, but it doesn't really matter. So it's important to look at those, and also for some people, they're animal spirits, especially domestic animals, dogs, cats, and horses. And mythical spirits sometimes creep into your dreams. The other night I had a dream where there was this mythical creature that was a mix between a raccoon and a dog that somebody had as a pet. And it had kind of a fontanelle, much like a baby, you know, opening to the head. It was quite bizarre. It was actually a bit scary. But, you know, all sorts of mythical spirits can come into your dreams. The established reservoir of symbols and images in the psyche is highly individual. And this is the most important thing with regard to dream interpretation. You have to be very careful of helping somebody else with a dream because you don't really know their culture. For instance, if you go to a vendor, Sangoma, and you say, I had a dream last night about fish, he'll say, oh, that means money is coming, you know. If you go to a Christian who's a dream interpreter and you ask him about fish, he'll allude it to Jesus and you know, spiritual wealth. If you go to a Zulu Sangoma and you ask about a dream to do with dogs, they'll say more than likely this is witchcraft. And if you go to a dog lover, he's going to say it's unconditional love or it's loyalty. So you have to be really careful. This is why books are not going to help you. You have to be very careful. There are a few universals, like a house can usually be your body, like the attic might be your head, and you know, the kitchen might be your stomach, you know, that sort of thing. The car is usually the way you're driving your life. You know, are you sitting in the back seat? Are you a passenger? You know, are you driving erratically? Are the brakes off? You have no control. That'll tell you something about what's going on. But for the most part, you really have to know something about the person before venturing an interpretation. There is an individual variability in the permeability of the veil between the worlds. We're all very different. You know, if you look at clairvoyance, some people have very vivid dreams. Some people hear voices. They hear things. I sometimes get both. Some people feel, they just say clairsentient. They wake up with a feeling or just a knowing that something, they understand now what's happened. It doesn't mean it wasn't a dream. It just means you didn't see it and you didn't hear it, but you feel it and it's happening at an intuitive level. So one has to honor the way you get your own dreams. Don't try and read a book and say, well, there's something wrong with me because I don't get these kind of dreams, so I don't dream, and then you shut it out of your mind. Start focusing on the way that you get your particular information and then listen for that. You know, you may not hear a voice, you may not see a vivid dream, but you may just wake up with a feeling and honor the feeling. The snake brings the dream. This was actually a voice or a telepathic communication that came to me in a dream way back. And the snake brings the dream is a reference, I think, to the Kundalini, to spiritual practice. The Kundalini is that primal, feminine, snake-like energy resting in the lower spine that is the key to spiritual enlightenment, to liberation, to opening up your third eye, for spiritual transformation. The Zulus call this the Umbulini, and all tribal Southern African people believe in a primitive snake that rests in the lower belly that's feminine and is the key to spiritual power and also to fertility. You know, if you look at the Asclepian temples of old, Asclepius had snakes in his temple, you know, and you went there to dream and to get healing from the temple. And there's a snake wound around the staff of Asclepius, which is the symbol in most other countries for the medical profession. The caduceus is more the symbol here in the United States. And the kind of snakes you get in your dreams are really important. Like in the South African context, if you dream a python, it's a very powerful endorsement, empowerment from your ancestors. Python, like lions, represent the ancestors. But if you dream a mamba, which is a dangerous poisonous snake, it's a very severe warning from the ancestors. Be very careful of something. Now, like I said, there's no difference between dream time and awake time. So if you see a mamba during awake time and you're a sangoma, you're very careful. You watch your back for the next 48 hours. So you can extrapolate that to the Santa Barbara backcountry. You know, if you see a rattlesnake or you dream rattlesnake, it could be a warning, you know, of something bad that's going to happen. If you see a king snake, something as beautiful as one of those king snakes that you see in the backcountry, it's usually, wow, the ancestors are happy with me. So they try and send you animals sometimes because they can't always get through in dreams. You might see butterflies, you might see hummingbirds, and you recognize them as being, your grandmother or your grandfather or somebody who liked that particular animal. So look for animals. Snakes, though, are very important. And it's kind of interesting is that when I was building my healing center in South Africa, George, we just finished the healing hut where we did the bones, and George came to me and he said, now we finished the healing hut, we must catch a python and put it in the healing hut so people can dream and sleep there nicely. So I said, people won't sleep in the healing hut if you put a python there. But he knew about the importance of snake and the ancestors and the importance of python, but he has no knowledge of Greek mythology or anything else. Now, I wanted to distinguish between visitations and dreams because they're very different. Visitations are not dreams. They manifest outside of the dream state. They too alert, inform, advise, guide, comfort, or directly engage, but are rare in occurrence. They can be abundant and concentrated when the visitors feel a sense of urgency, wanting, or insistence, and have the ability and will to transcend the difficulties. It's not easy to script dreams. It needs some skill. It's very difficult to visit, so it requires tremendous energy to come and visit. Visitations take enormous energy and have other limiting factors as well, so they are prompted by great purpose and seek open, accessible conduits. So sometimes, because they can't get through to you, they might come and visit somebody else who's a more accessible conduit. That's called getting somebody else's mail. Well, that's not their mail because this is actually a visit. It's getting somebody else's visit. Who here has had visitations? The person is there, right? It's a completely different thing. They are there. They're in the room. Anybody get visitations in the daytime? There we go. Yeah. Great. Now, dreams, this is what the ancestors say. Dreams are an easier expression than visitations, but also have the limitations of opportunity and energy use. They often use established receptacles. This is very important. Established receptacles, especially symbols and images in the dreamer's consciousness, and I would add their subconscious as well. And what can be recalled in memory. Dreams can be as powerful as visitations, though subject to interference, misinterpretation, and misuse. So dreams can be polluted. That's one of the disadvantages of dreams as opposed to divination. Bones are usually protected by a sort of a sacred spiritual firewall that prevents polluting spirits and forces coming into the space. So when you're reading the bones, it's much less likely to be, polluted than a dream. I'm going to talk more about that. How can we be sure then that we are not interpreting wrongly and thus impacting ourselves or the world negatively? The world might be your world, but it might be the world in general. Black Elk had a vivid dream, and he believed everything was going to be right for his tribe, and it was devastating, it was completely wrong. So dreams to do with global events are very difficult to interpret because there's so many variables, and each variable has free will. I don't know if this is true, but I seem to recall somebody or hearing it somewhere that Bush invaded Iraq because he heard a voice or that he saw it in a dream. And I wouldn't be surprised that kind of thing influences political leaders, even if it's not true for Bush, and makes them make the wrong decisions because there are tricksters out there that want to sabotage things. Well, how do we help ourselves? Ego is the biggest stumbling block, encompassing expectations of ourselves and others. Also competing for attention are our fears, worries, guilts, resentments. And the more we are aware of these traits and tendencies and weaknesses, the easier it is to avoid them. A spiritual focus is our truest guide. This is why spiritual practice is so important. When we seek the help of others in interpretation, it is as important that we look to their spirituality as it is to our own for clarity. Those with a high level of spirituality are able to activate positive energy even from the most negative dream. So we need to look at the dreams on the bright side, not on the dark side, as you will see why later. So ego, our fears, and the spiritual focus are the key factors. Beware of making the interpretation of the dream fit to what narrow mind desires. I was warned about this more than once. You take the dream and you say, wow, that's great. That's an endorsement of exactly what I wanted to do, but it's actually the opposite of what you wanted to do. That's your ego. That's what's called narrow mind, monkey mind, the shadow side of yourself, which can trip you up. Now, this is what you have as your handout, and it's pretty much a summary of where we're going to go. If you look at this approach, be careful of ego and have you got an agenda here? Be careful of your own fears. Is this a projection of your fear? Like you have fear of flying, and now you're dreaming of the plane going down. Maybe you need to maybe not cancel the flight. Your level of spirituality and your spiritual practice, knowledge of the person and their culture, and then on either side, truth versus lies, light and dark are all working here, and scripted versus the subconscious. Well, you might say, well, so what? What's the difference between the subconscious and the scripted, even if maybe the ancestors are scripting the subconscious as well? Well, the difference is gratitude and nurturing and prayer will improve your dreams, which it may not necessarily do if you're just talking about the subconscious. It's like if you have a friend, the more energy you put into giving and showing gratitude, the friendship develops. Kind of like, having a pen pal, but you don't write back to your pen pal, you're not going to stop getting letters. So this is kind of a summary of where we're going to go for the next part of the talk. A few original truths, and some of them are repeats, but it's important. Visitations are not dreams, but visits, and require tremendous energy. So if you have a visitation, this is an occasion for celebration. You want to have a party for the ancestors if it's so important. At least go to your altar, make an offering, light a candle, say thank you, because it's like your grandfather, whoever it was, drove from New York to California just to tell you something. That's the kind of effort that's involved. So be very grateful if there's a visitation. Be grateful for all dreams, but visitations especially. Spirits use the easiest channels and preset symbols in your consciousness. It takes much more effort to create a new software program in your consciousness that they can then put into your psyche. So they're going to use preset symbols and metaphors and so on. And if they can't get through to you, they're going to come through to somebody else. Anybody here get dreams for other people? There you go. Anybody here who has other people getting dreams for them? It's really important you pass the message on. You've got to pass on the letter. Dreams cannot easily be called. Well, they can be called, with the spiritual practice, with your altar. You go to bed at night and ask 3 times for a dream. Ask to remember the dream, and you might get one. You may not get it the same night, but you might even get it a week later. There's no time on the other side. So they don't honor the fact that we're time-based. They might come at any time. And there are certain medicinal plants that can help you. People sometimes use mugwort or use a mugwort pillow, and you can smell the mugwort, which becomes a container like a ring or one of the other little artifacts I was telling you about, where the ancestors can more easily come through to you. I think they do help. Beware the accuracy of interpretation, which sets intention and action. We're going to talk quite a bit about this. Dreams reveal truths, but also untruths. All dreams hold the possibility of pollution, of hacksters. And there is what's called, I got in a dream, the so-called zebra effect. Remember, a zebra has white and black stripes, which represent the light and the dark. This is what's operating in our dreams. And the more sophisticated your dreams become, the more the tricksters are going to visit you. This may not apply to most people here, but it may apply to some of you. And it applies to all of us in terms of sometimes you get an important dream, you need to be aware of this. It's a bit like the Taoist sign, the yin-yang sign, which has got light on the one side with a dark spot, and then dark on the other side with a white spot. There's this balance of light and dark, or the zebra effect going on. Once I had a dream where and this is where this zebra effect came from. I was walking in a forest in South Africa with a friend, and I came across some trees, and I said, these are zebra trees. We better get out of here because these are used for witchcraft. And there actually is a zebra tree, a Commiphora variety in South Africa. I don't know if it's used by witchcraft because I don't know about that. But I wouldn't be surprised because if you look at the bark of the tree, it looks a little bit sinister. So beware of the zebra effect. Why complex metaphors? Well, if you think of it, in terms of maybe what's going on now with the internet and ISIS and, computers and being hacked into, in order to get a message through the spyware of the dark forces, if you like, sometimes the ancestors have to script a metaphor which looks innocuous. It's like they can't monitor every single message. It's like the NSA and all these guys. They have to focus on where the important stuff is. So if you slip through a metaphor that doesn't make sense to the other side, the dark side, or that's ambiguous, they often let it through. And that's why sometimes these complex metaphors, complex dreams are the ones that require the most interpretation, because they can be quite difficult. But that's the way they slip through whatever you want to call the barrier that the dark forces or the tricksters are setting up. Beware of your state of mind prior to sleep. We talked about that. Because of free will, dreams tell you what to see, not what to be. You can be perfectly entitled to take that plane and go down, or maybe not go down. That's the cosmic law. The veil opens closer to death, so we start to see our ancestors closer to death. That's kind of good or bad. If you've got good karma, they're all waiting and they're loving you and they're reassuring you that everything is going to be good. But if you've got really bad karma, you're going to be haunted by the ghosts of the past and the skeletons in the family closets. And that's why you see some people get very disturbed, psychologically, and they're seeing things, they're not very happy about it. Concerning those who dream for others, this is what's called getting somebody else's mail. They help to get your attention in a way that could not be commanded otherwise. The senders use what they feel is the most effective way of advising, apprising, enlightening, warning, encouraging, sometimes just to make you feel supported and loved. Devices are used that you cannot easily dismiss. So getting dreams for other people is really important. I'll just give you, I'll make it very brief, but I had a professor, he was my professor of surgery in South Africa, who was a very formidable character. Not the kind of guy you come to and say, I'm having dreams from you, especially when you haven't seen him in 30 years. And, your son's trying to tell you from the other side that everything's fine, So I tried to approach him over the years because I kept getting dreams for him. And somehow I couldn't get through. He didn't ask me the right question, and I thought he'd just think I was completely nuts if I told him. And then eventually I decided, I was in South Africa this last year, I decided I've got to somehow get this message across to him. Because there were two aspects of it. One is he had unfinished business with somebody, and the other one was from his son. And this is just to emphasize how important it is for you, because you can really help somebody's karma by giving them the message, even though I didn't really want to do it. So I went to visit him, and we had a nice conversation, and he was receptive to the idea of his son. He'd obviously done a lot of work about his son who had died on an ultralight crash. But, I said to him, you've got some unfinished business with, one of your mentors, who was the head of surgery in South Africa. And he said, no, I don't think I have any unfinished business. I knew what the unfinished business was, because this fellow who was his mentor was incredibly impeccable. And the fellow who I was getting dreams for was not 100% impeccable. And it was quite clear that his karma was going to be impacted by this maybe lack of impeccability, especially with reference to this guy who loved him so much. So I actually managed to get, I didn't tell him that time, but then I called him at a later date, and I said, I think I know what the problem was. And he asked me what I thought it was, and I told him, and he was very accepting of it. So even if it's really scary and you don't want to do it, try and find a way to do it in a conscious fashion. And he was very accepting of it from this guy who's very Calvinistic and Afrikaner, hardcore guy who only talks to you, you don't really talk to him. But he suddenly turned around and he was asking me what he should do about it and how he could help the situation. It's always about forgiveness. So especially if you have something that has to do with forgiveness, it's a really important thing. By the same token, you've got to be careful, because I also had dreams, like for a friend of mine I hadn't seen for many years, that he had something in his colon. And I thought, well, maybe he's got colon cancer. So you don't call the guy up and say, I think you've got colon cancer, You call him up and you say, have you had a colonoscopy recently? I had a funny dream. Or, are you having any symptoms? Because he's also a physician, and he said, there was nothing. And I said, well, I just had this dream, and if you haven't had a checkup, maybe go and have a checkup. It's probably nothing. But then you've done your due diligence. Your karma is clean. Pass on the messages. You might start getting messages for other people now, especially if you start to embark on on a dream practice. Now, to make a point or warn, what do the ancestors do? Firstly, the nightmare is the biggest dream of the night. If it's a nightmare that's not invoked by being too hot or being uncomfortable when you sleep, or you've watched a bad movie the night before, or maybe you had too much wine or chocolate or something like that. If it's come aside from any of those things, you need to pay attention to it, because the nightmares are the way that they warn you the most powerfully. They're always going to exaggerate the nightmare. They're going to make it 3 times worse than it really is, but that's because they want to give you attention. They're not going to say, I want to share this with you, that maybe you shouldn't take this trip to Zimbabwe. They're going to show you death and devastation in Zimbabwe, to really make you think very, very, very carefully about it. The recurring dream is a more subtle way of them warning you, a dream that keeps coming back again and again and again, about your work, about a relationship, about something, is usually a warning. The visitation is often an empowerment. It's just a visit when they come to say happy birthday or whatever. It may be the day they died or something. They want to just encourage you. But the visitation might come to tell you something very important. They just come and they tell you and then they leave. And pay attention to that. Using other channels and speaking in tongues is another very important way to do it. If they can't get through to you, they'll go to somebody else. Now, early on in our dream practice, because we had a dream practice going back the last 15 years, Mary Ellen and I would share dreams regularly. And I was going to South Africa once, and I was going to buy a property. And, she was a little nervous about what I was doing, and going to South Africa being a dangerous place, and buying a piece of land and so on. So she got 2 dreams. I won't bore you with the details, but they came in Afrikaans to her. And she knows no Afrikaans. And she said, no, the ancestors, one was 1 week and then another week. And the words were, tell Dave to be careful of these people in Afrikaans. And I did, and if I hadn't, I might have bought the wrong piece of property. So if you get a dream in tongues, be sure you get the thing interpreted if you don't know what it is. Or if it's for somebody else, be sure that, that they make sure what anybody get funny languages in their dreams? Yeah, good. There was somebody else as well. So, go to Google. It's quite easy now to get an interpretation. You can find out. Yeah, Google is very helpful. So speaking in tongues is very powerful, and somebody is getting dreams for you, also very, very powerful. If you are doing meaningful spiritual work, you will be opposed. So, and I would say that if you are in a position of extreme importance, you have the ability to make a lot of a difference in people's lives. You're president of a country or something like that would be the ultimate. The spiritual mafia will come after you. They're mafia on this side. The mafia on this side are not going to bother most of us because we're not in a position to offer them any opposition. But we may be in a position to offer the spiritual mafia opposition. If you start interfering with their work, and you might be, helping people try to get rid of dark forces, then they might come after you. Like I say, this doesn't apply to probably 90% of you, but it's important to know that these movies that we watch that are mythical, Darth Vader, if you are somebody important, you're going to have your own Darth Vader appointed to you, guaranteed. If you don't, they're either tricking you and you don't think you are, or you're not that important, end of story. So be advised that there are people out there who are vulnerable to the spiritual forces. For instance, maybe even Black Elk, maybe in a trickster dream that got him all messed up and destroyed his nation. The dark forces can intrude in dreams, but keep in mind that distortions may also be projections of your own fears, doubts, insecurities, and questions about yourself as well. So you've got to be self-aware. If you're getting lots of warnings and dangerous things going on, it might be part of your subconscious or your conscious psyche. The important thing, though, is the dark force of the tricksters have access to your software the same as your spirit guides have. It's an equal opportunity. It's a neutral field, exactly like the internet. You get, pedophiles and pornographic pop-ups on the internet. That's the power of the internet. It's got to be completely democratic. The power of the dream time is that it's completely democratic. So the dark forces know your fears, or your subconscious fears, and they know all the stuff about your past lives, the same thing your ancestors know. They relish such, and using them to your disadvantage, confusion, and alienation. So again, this is talking more about folks who are doing a very deep spiritual work. So this is the cosmology I learned from the Sangomas. And if you look at the individual here, and then you have the family here, and then you have the community over here, and then you have the veil between the worlds. Some of you have seen this slide. And on this side of the veil, we have the witch and the sorcerer, the dark side, who can intrude in your dreams. On this side, we have the healer, or what the Africans call the spirit of Ubuntu. Ubuntu is basically love your neighbor as yourself. I'm not a person. I'm only a person through other people. And that spirit is pervasive, especially in more the rural parts of South Africa still. And then you have the veil between the worlds, and you have the dark forces, the tricksters. Maybe it's more friendly to just call them tricksters. And we have our own spirit guides in the astral. And the causal, is probably not relevant for most of us here today. So this is important to know, because there's a kind of a Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings thing going on. If you have the ring, there'll be a golem. If you have something, envy is the source of all negative energy. That's why there's a whole commandment that says, do not covet your neighbor or anything that belongs to your neighbor. Interesting. Why can't I be jealous if I want to? Well, it's the basis of witchcraft. So there's always going to be jealous and envious people on both sides of the veil. So some time ago, I was asked to give a talk to the International Jungian Association in Cape Town about dreams, because it was very interesting. They were in South Africa, and Jung was very much attached to indigenous cultures and shamanic knowledge. And there was a whole 2-day session on Sangomas, and Sangomas came, and I talked about dreams. And before, I didn't know what to talk about. I thought, what am I going to talk about to Jungians? They know all about dreams. And then I got a dream that said, talk about the dream time as if it's a computer. Now, I'm not a computer buff, but this is what I came up with. We have preset symbols and images in our consciousness, or maybe in our subconscious. These are both new and old. So if you look at our hardware, we have our blood root, which is our genetics and our DNA, where we came from. But we also have our karma, our karma that we're living with now, our immediate karma. But we also have what the Buddhists call our store consciousness, which is the accumulation of karma over the eons. We've come in and out of thousands of lifetimes. So this is our store consciousness. One Buddhist teacher once likened it to all your skeletons in the basement of your house that sometimes come up into the living room. That karma can affect you, even though it's from past lives. So this is our hard drive. Our software is our religion, our education, our culture, our conditioning, or in other words, our life experience. And we're going to have symbols and metaphors and images that are in our consciousness. And this is what the ancestors are working with. So this is from the Zohar, and it says, you cannot have a dream without false imaginings and interminglings. Parts are true and parts are false. There is no dream that does not reflect both this side and that. Demonic forces and tricksters lurk to smuggle false images and messages into the dreams. Many truths are revealed in dreams, but be alert to falsities as well, most especially in interpretation. Now again, this is, if you're starting to get an advanced dream practice, which I suspect many of you here will start to get. Many of you probably have better dreams than many good dreamers. So be alert to this. This is from the Zohar, that there can be these false imaginings and interminglings. There's a story about a fellow who went to study with a famous Kabbalist, and he went into a Kabbalistic university called the Yeshiva and spent 10 years, and he came out of the university, and all his friends got together and had a party for him, and they said, well, what did you learn there in the last 10 years? He said, I learned how to sleep. So when you're really getting very deeply into this type of a thing, and you're on a very strong spiritual path, then if you're getting dreams, this is going to happen. So this is what I came up with. You know, if this is your hard drive, these are the good guys, and they have access to your hard drive, so do the bad guys, but they're connected through to this hard drive by love and by previous or recent reincarnations. And this is your software, and this is Photoshop. So here's the visitation. They just come directly into your space. You know, it's not even, they're not even in the dream. It's outside of the dream. Here what they do is they go into your software, they copy a symbol or an image, they push it through Photoshop, and they tweak it to fit, and then they paste it into the psyche. I mean, it's very simplistic, but this is kind of how it works. It can also work in the daytime. It doesn't have to be at night. Some of you get your messages in daytime. You don't get dreams. I speak to people all the time, and I say, have you had any dreams? No, I don't dream, but this is what happens in the daytime. Like there's no distinction, really. So what can the dark forces do? Firstly, they can block the visitation. They can block you getting into the software. They can corrupt the file that you are now going to paste into the dream psyche and make it to suit themselves. So they also don't play fair, you see, because they go against free will, which is God's law. And if you know, it's kind of like a dirty football team and there's no umpire or referee. They're going to win the game because, you know, the one team is playing honestly and the other team is not. They win the game, but they don't win the war. That's the most important thing, is just to be patient. So they can also get into your software and script a dream and copy and paste it to suit themselves, or they can distort a dream that's already been put through Photoshop. And this is sort of how it works. They can also shapeshift, because they can take, say, an image of your best friend and pretend to be your best friend in the dream, and your best friend will be somebody that you don't know this person. That's not him, you know. But then you start to wonder, well, maybe it is him, you know, because that's what they want to do. So they can shapeshift and do fancy things. It's very, very interesting, this whole thing, and it works in daytime as well. So I thought I'd just go through a classification. We're doing okay. I have time for a break and then questions. And this is what I suggest you do, especially if you're getting lots of dreams, or even if you're not. I usually classified it because, especially during the time of my initiation and for a few years after, my dreams have decreased in number. I was getting so many dreams I had to do something with them because I knew I'm never going to go over all these dreams. So I categorized them. So at least if I knew I wanted to look for a warning dream, I could go to one category, and I'd write them down and put them in my computer. So look at the form of the message, look at the message itself, and look at any sensory aspects of the message, which are important. The form, now this is for myself. You may be different. These are no rules. The last 72 hours, I used to think that if a dream came in the last 72 hours, it wasn't meaningful. Like you're watching a movie or something you read in the newspaper or TV, and then you get a dream, you think, well, okay, I read that. Well, you know, you may be watching a terrible newsreel of a tsunami somewhere and people being drowned, and then, you know, 2 nights later you have a dream that you're in the tsunami and you're being drowned. Don't ignore that, because it might mean that they're now using that new dream, that new image for you, which is fresh, easy to script, and using to warn you about something. So if you are going to maybe take on a new job, or sell your house, or buy a new house, or start a relationship, or end a relationship, be very careful if you have a tsunami dream, because it might mean you're going to be drowned if you make this decision. So pay attention to any dream, no matter when the image was pasted. The apparition dream for me is usually a warning. Some years ago, I fell off a slippery ladder on a platform in the Amazon jungle, trying to get out of the jungle to catch my flight. I fell down off the platform, broke my arm, broke my wrist. I sustained a Colles fracture. That night, I didn't remember when I woke up. I remembered when I was sitting in the boat going back to get to the 4x4. There was an apparition dream of a guy who I'd worked with in Johannesburg, He was a brilliant trauma surgeon from Austria, and he had a very unique way of fixing the very fracture that I had that night. He came as an apparition into my dream. I had not seen or heard or thought of this guy for 25 years, and suddenly he was in my dream. So what happened there is the ancestors took that image. They said, this guy's going to get a Colles fracture tomorrow. Let's warn him. They take that image, they pretend to be him, and they paste it into my dream psyche. The bad thing was I didn't remember the dream till after the fact, because if I'd remembered, I might not have broken my arm. I had a dream once of a favorite aunt as an apparition, and she died about a week later. Anybody here have apparition dreams? Yeah. They're usually warnings. Usually warnings, but they may not be. Acts of a play, these are rare. I've only had just a handful. But this is what's going to play out. This is actually prophetic. It'll be exactly what's going to happen. There's Act 1, there's Act 2, there's Act 3, and it's so compelling that you get up and you know you've got to write it down. Anybody have this? Yeah, okay. So you might have these dreams and you may not be remembering them because you jump up to go to the bathroom. So these are just things to know whether you're getting it or not. A sense of knowing or clarity. This is probably one of the most important things. You go to bed with a problem and you wake up with the answer. And you think, that's genius. I'm such a smart person. Meanwhile, your ancestors may have scripted that answer for you, into your subconscious and they can do it in the daytime. It happens to me frequently. I'm doing yoga or going on a hike, and then suddenly I have an idea, and I think that's a fantastic idea, but it's probably not coming from me. So this is a very important one. Who gets these? A lot of people, yeah. Probably many of you do, but you don't remember. Power animals, land or seascapes. People who are nature-bound. Indigenous people often have these kind of dreams. They dream the animals suffering, or whales beaching, or floods and all this kind of stuff. But power animals come to you. Often it's the animal that you need at the time, with a metaphor for what you need to look for. If you don't understand the metaphor, there's actually quite a good book out about it's a Native American book. Yeah. We'll take questions later, but that's a good one. I'm not sure. Okay, so you may have your power animal coming in daytime or nighttime, and if you're a nature-bound person. Personas or imposters, important. You've got to go with what your heart tells you about that best friend who's looking bad. Some years back, I was doing a trip to South Africa, and somebody had a very bright shamanic future, was coming on the trip, and then she called me up and said, Dave, I want my deposit back. I'm not coming. I had this demonic dream of you. There was blood streaming down your face, and you looked like a demon. And I said, well, fine, cancel it. I'll give you your deposit back, but think about it. And then later on, she called me a few weeks later and said, no, I had a good dream about you, and I'm coming along. And, it was her ancestors trying, not the dark forces trying to cut her off at the pass by making her not come. Because I think that trip was very seminal for her on her shamanic path, which she developed on her own later. So be careful of personas or imposters. Words, quotes, songs. Sometimes you'll just get a word. Sometimes I script my talks by giving me a couple of words that I've forgotten in the talk to tell me what to do. Or a quote or a song. Sometimes the words of the songs are the message that you need to know. They might send you a quote like, Matthew chapter 2, verse 1. Go look it up. It'll be exactly what you need. Or Bhagavad Gita, read it and see if there's a message for you there. Don't ignore these things. We've talked about those aspects, getting other people's mail and speaking in tongues. A lot of dreams are from us visiting in the astral, other realms and other lifetimes. We go into the astral, these parallel universes, and this is a way of sort of keeping. See, when I talk about dark forces, weird things start to happen to me. Computers start to go off. Other realms and lifetimes are rehearsal for what's going to happen to us later. The message, so this is very clear. They come to warn you. You know, that's often a nightmare. To nudge you, to instruct or teach you, to empower or visit you, maybe on your birthday or their birthday or their death day. The dark forces to intrude on you, to make you feel bad, to make you feel fearful. And there's a big category of dreams which are to tend. Steve Eisenstadt sort of introduced me to that term. It's a really good dream where you don't know what the dream means, you know. But it's good to log it, especially if it's important, because sometime down the road you can pick it out and it'll be a help to you. I remember when I was looking for this piece of property, I had a very vivid dream about exactly what the property looked like, and I pretty much had found the property according to a recent dream that I had. And I remembered that it must be 10, 15 years before, in a ritual in the Amazon, I had a sort of a dreamlike vision of a similar valley. I didn't have quite the same mountain, but on the one hill was a house without a roof. And when I found the right property, there was a house without a roof. So this was 15 years before I found the place. So that's the point of tending the dreams, and you'll probably remember it anyway, but it's important to tend to them because they might be important. And then I gave a talk once, and I had this as a category, a garbage dream, and some dream expert, you know, said he took offense to that, and he was quite right, because, you know, you should never label your dreams garbage, although I think often they are, because the subconscious is working stuff out. But this is what the ancestors say: be careful of saying just a dream or only a dream. In attempting to distinguish between what is real and what is not, you would do as well to say it was just awake time, it was only awake time. The dream time is not less real, it is simply a different mode of being, of learning, of expressing, and one where the guardedness and contrivedness of ego is relaxed. Remember, your ego is not so present in the dream, which is a huge advantage. This is why you can do amazing feats, because, you know, you're in an imaginal realm. You can fly or climb mountains and things you can't do in real time. Sensory aspects, well, it can be that, you know, you're either clairvoyant or audient or sentient in your dreams, as we mentioned. If the dream is technicolor, brilliant technicolor, or numinous or luminous, even if you don't know what it means, it's important. It means the ancestors have tried hard to tell you something. It might just be to give you a lot of pleasure. The intensity of the dream is also important. There may just be dreams that are sometimes more intense, goodly or not so goodly or badly. And then sometimes kundalini energy. Do anybody have energy going up your spine or vibrations or tingling? Yeah. If you have kundalini energy, even if you don't understand the dream, work with it, because it probably means there's something important that you need to know. Or again, it's just an empowering dream from the ancestors. I remember once when I was doing my initiation, I went to see a Sangoma, and he said, no, when you get home, your bed is going to shake. I thought, oh, yeah. And I came home, and literally my bed would start to shake at night. And I'd wake up, and I think there'd been an earthquake, and I'd check the newspaper in the morning, and there'd been nothing. And this happened like 3 or 4 times. And I think it was Kundalini energy, because in my dreamlike state, I didn't know. It felt like the bed was shaking, but it was probably just me that was shaking. So if you get this kind of sensation, your ancestors are around. The presence of energy, either good or bad. Now, fear is one thing. A nightmare is fearful, but it's a good thing. But if you get a sort of a sinister feeling or a bad feeling, that might be an intrusive dream. You know, if you're getting repeated dreams that are intrusive with bad feelings, it might be that there's you're being haunted by some negative spirit or negative entity. And then you might need to seek some counseling. The fear is the nightmare of the night. Remember that sometimes your ancestors just standing there can be fearful. So fear is not the problem. It's the sinister effect of some bad energy or intrusiveness that you need to watch for. Coming to the end here. The most skillful interpreter, even one who knows you well, can at best only be revealing, suggesting, and guiding. You are the final arbitrator of your dream. Don't let anybody tell you, especially anything negative about your own dream. They can make suggestions humbly, but that's about all. As the person thinks, so he is. This is true, just as the dream follows its interpretation. The ancestors have also said, as you think it, so it can be. As you believe it, so it will be. What we think and what we believe is incredibly important. Now, the Talmud says that we do not see things as they are, we see them as we are. So the dream will follow the way you interpret the dream. It will be actualized according to the interpretation, so you have to be very careful. A dream contains, this is the Zohar, a dream contains both truth and lies, and hence the word of interpretation prevail over everything, and that they determine whether the true or the false part shall prevail. All symbols in a dream have potential energy. It is the interpretation that activates it. The interpretation assigns its manifestation, and that potential can be actualized either way. The imaginal realm, the dream world, is incredibly powerful. So if you take that imagination and you take it to heart and you believe in it, it's probably going to manifest at some stage in one form or another. Incredibly real. This is what we're going to talk about sometime later in the year, is the power of the imagination and words and the subconscious and how to manifest things, which is now big topics in books like The Secret and a lot of self-help workshops and so on. But we're going to talk about it more from the spiritual point of view. So all symbols in a dream have potential energy, and it is the interpretation that activates it. The interpretation assigns its manifestation. It's going to be actualized according to the way it's interpreted. So interesting, like yesterday I did bones for a woman, and I know her, she's a friend, and she said, I had a dream that you died recently. Now, but I don't, that doesn't affect me, but so you've got to be very careful the way if you have a dream like that for somebody, or somebody tells you, I had a dream I died, don't say, well, you better go and get a will, because if you reinforce the fact that something terrible is going to happen to you, that will help activate or actualize the dream. So we have to be very, very careful. The way a dream is interpreted is the way it will come to pass in the material world. Just as the use of a tool is its value, so is the interpretation what gives importance to a dream. The very interpretation can become a self-fulfilling prophecy, having potential to play itself out by activating one's power of intent and imagination. Remember, in spirit, everything happens with intention, the word, then action, and then attention, and then affirmation. So if you keep repeating it to yourself, it's going to happen. All right, conclusion. Free will is the cosmic law. Ask to receive. We actually help our ancestors by allowing them to help us. So don't feel you're selfish. We lift them up. In Zulu, they say, pagamisa. You lift them up because now they have a mission. They have a purpose. They can do work on the other side through our free will. We lose free will when we go to the astral realm. So when we ask them for their help and they become guides to us, we actually help them and we help their karma. They help us. It works very, very symbiotically. Nurture gratitude. Have a dedicated spiritual practice. Remember, love is the key. So the more you demonstrate love in your spiritual practice, the more it will return to you. So I think we'll take a break and then we'll come back, and we've got time for questions and maybe to share one or two dreams. Sometimes if somebody dies from a traumatic death or a confused death, illness where they're on drugs or morphine, or accident or murder or suicide, they don't have time to get ready. They often, and if they have false belief systems, like they don't believe in an afterlife and that this is the end, this is all there is, then they often get confused when they don't pass over to the light. They don't hear their ancestors calling them home, and they're earthbound. And they often can appear more easily to you and come in your dreams more easily. So if they're coming through real easily, it may be that they're earthbound and they need some help crossing over, and you can maybe, if you can discourse with them, you can maybe talk to them and say, hey, do you know that you're dead? Sometimes they don't even know they're dead. If they say yes, say, are you on the other side? Have you gone across to your ancestors on the other side? Are you on the other side of the veil? Are you reconciling with your karma? Or you're just hanging around the earth plane. And then if they are hanging around the earth plane, you can help them a lot by telling them that they're in the wrong place. They need to go to the light. The only thing is they may need some help. So if they keep coming back to you, you should seek some kind of shamanic help or somebody who can help you get rid of them. Unless they're coming to you with information, if they're coming to you with interesting information, they're helping you, then they might be assigned to be spirit guides to you. But those only come when they can come and when they need to come. They're not allowed, I guess it's an energy thing, or maybe it's to do with rules, but they can't just come and visit you every night usually. So if they're coming like a lot frequently, it's probably they're earthbound, and as a result of maybe a dysfunctional death and not seeing the light and going to the right place. Yeah, it sounds like one of those dreams where you're traveling in the astral. I mean, this is all I can make of it. You're traveling in the astral in a certain realm, and you come across something that's happening, and you start to encounter it and react to it, And sometimes those things are not so pleasant, and sometimes the realm might be a darker realm, even though you haven't had chocolate or wine or anything.
It's not necessarily personal.
It's not necessarily personal insofar as it's just an indication that you probably are traveling at night, to the astral realm in different parallel vibrations and encountering different things. Some people are travelers, they go into different vibrations at night.
Is there a sequence of things one should ask, or do you just try and stay open to?
Just stay open and interact with the dream. But if you, after a bit of practice, if you start to understand where you are, the best thing is to leave that realm, and not interact with it, because they're pulling you into their realm, that doesn't have to be real for you. So you can stop it, but then, for instance, if you started to create an altercation and then it turned nasty, you're in the dream time, so you may as well go to another vibration that's more pleasant if you can, or wake up from it. Sometimes if you're getting a recurring dream where you keep going to bad places, you can program yourself not to go, or at least to wake up and not be there.
And so someone else's interpretation or suggestion that it was a positive, that I was being resourceful in my efforts to put it out.
That's fair, but I would say it would be positive if you had fear of fires, or if you're usually somebody who doesn't speak up, and you now are overcoming one of your fears, then it's a positive thing. It's like, if that's something we can do, we can have rehearsals to deal with things in the dream time that we have trouble dealing with in real life, and then we can extend that to the lifetime, to the life thing. So if you're the kind of person who normally would go and you'd see somebody starting a fire, and you might say, well, I'm not going to interact because I'd rather not make waves. But in the dream you did it, well, that's very, very positive. But you don't look like that kind of a person. It looks like you're the kind of person who would have stopped it and called somebody. So I don't know, yeah.
I just figured out why I came here today. Because I put down this class, like when we were registering months ago, as a maybe.
Yeah.
And I said, I don't know if this is interesting. And a couple nights ago, my grandmother, who died like 25 years ago at 94, gardening in her garden, what she loved to do, and died of a heart attack there. But she came to me and said, you should go to this class. No. And the dream was, I was going to her house, and my uncle lived across the street from her, and he took care of her. So I came there, and he said, she's resting, don't go in. But she saw me through the open door, and she says, she called me Babinku. My name's Bob. So she said, Babinku, come in, come in. So I came in, and we sat down, and we talked in Slovak, which is, I know a few words, but I don't know what it was, but it was a very happy dream. And we talked together, so I don't have any words to go translate. Yeah. But now, in the last couple of days, I was cleaning my room. I've come to a white cloth and a rock that said gratitude on it. And I'm going, what am I going to do with these things? And I have the ancestral altar with the photos, so now I'll put them there. And she's just saying, get here so I can come through you. So I want to thank you.
Oh, sure. That's a real gift. I mean, now you have a very powerful guide. I can talk to you in Slovak. The fact is, you understand it even if you don't understand the Slovak in real time, because the tongues work.
How do you know this isn't all your own consciousness that's giving you these answers in your dream versus spirits and other people coming in? And you said, we create our own reality. So why not pick one that is more charming, that has more hope to it?
Yeah.
So maybe, it's something maybe you could say.
Yeah, well, you said it very nicely, maybe better than I did. But you know, it's true. You create your own reality, but also you actually encourage the ancestors to participate with you. You know, when I first did my initiation, one of the first things my mentor said to me in Swaziland, he said, you know, the trouble with you white people, he says, you've lost the way. You are unsupported in life. You have no ancestors to help you. You don't even know who your grandfathers or grandmothers are. So that's one aspect of it, you know. But the other aspect is if you know who they are, talk to them, you know, and you might be surprised at what starts to happen. You might be very surprised. So create your own reality the way you want it, absolutely. But there's no question that what you give will come back to you, even if it doesn't come back the way you expect it to come back. It's not going to come back in writing or in neon lights, but things will start to shift and start to change for you. Your life will change because you have some interaction. And, you know, it might be that you've got to find your way that they're coming to you. You know, that it might be they're going to come to you through animal signs, or they're going to come to you through, you know, you go to a bookstore and a book sort of appeals to you. And the next thing is you take a book out of hundreds of other books and you take it off the shelf, and then you open it up and you actually hit the right page and you say, wow, isn't that a coincidence? Well, there aren't any coincidences. You know, that's ancestor work. So when you start to believe in magic, you get magic. When you discount magic, you don't get magic. You know, you create your own reality. You know, when the first boats, the first ships came to the North American continent, the Native Americans couldn't see them at first because they had no framework to create a reality that understood what a ship meant. So if you don't have that reality, you know, create the reality, and then you'll see it. You know, it's the opposite of what we say. The sad thing is that if you look at less than 1% of the scientific world believe that consciousness is outside of the brain. You know, so they're missing a huge part of the, you know, I think a lot of those people are just scared to say that they do. But nevertheless, if you admit to, you know, being a little bit crazy, your life will improve. If it doesn't, I'll give you a refund. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Some of my dreams are so not like my own reality. I wake up saying, who writes this stuff? I mean, where does this come from? I mean, it's so strange and different than what my normal reality is like. And I wonder if that's the other realm.
I think it's the other realms, remembering that the other realms sometimes are very strange. And you have wherever you go to and you die, you create your own reality. You're a Christian with a Christian belief system, you're going to go to that kind of a world. You know, if you're a Buddhist and you believe in a pure land, you're going to go to a pure land, you know. So that doesn't mean to say that you can't intrude on somebody else's territory and break into their territory when you travel. And then you kind of get weird stuff like mythical creatures and animals you've never seen before, and weird stuff going on. But that's exactly a testament to what the Eastern religions say about the Maya, the illusion that, you know, the Kabbalists say that this reality that we are living in is 1% of what there is out there. There's the other 99% of what there is out there, which we don't have access to, but we have access to it through the dream time. So, and there's all sorts of realities there. So I wouldn't be worried about it, you know, maybe just be entertained by it. Yeah.
Last July, it was more than a dream. Somebody from my past, a relative from my past, I was lying down and my husband was next to me and I said, oh my gosh, Al is here. Al is here and it's not a dream. And what he did was he cupped my face, which is what he used to do. And he used to cup my face and just stare at me. And in my mind, I said, Al, what are you trying to say to me? And then all I got was, are you trying to say to me to take care of myself? Is that what you're saying? And that's all I heard, take care of yourself. And I got diagnosed with breast cancer 2 weeks later. Yeah, which I completely healed. Yeah.
I think some people are lucky. They get very colorful Technicolor dreams. I think most of my dreams are kind of more black and white or gray, you know. What's important isn't so much the how amazing the dream is, it's what it means to you. You know, sometimes you'll go to some dream place and there'll be people having the most extraordinary dreams, and then you think, oh gosh, you know, I'm not a dreamer. But it might be that you're getting subtle messages that are just even more powerful than somebody who's getting things in Technicolor. I remember listening to a couple of people who were lucid dreamers, which is a fantastic gift to have, because you can do all sorts of amazing things. You know, you can do, for instance, what you did. You can create a reality that you want to fix, you know, some fault in yourself that you want to help. Or you can travel and go to different places and things. But it sounded, with the way they were describing them, they were more like for entertainment. And sometimes the kind of dreams I'm getting now are much less colorful than they used to be, but they're little succinct sort of bullet points. Do this, you know, this sort of one-liners. And that's kind of all I need at the moment. So they give you what you need. You know, because of the energy problem, it takes them a lot of work for them to do it. So they're going to do the least amount of work to get you the message that you need to get. And that might be that it's too much effort for them to make it in Technicolor or in color. So they'll get you the message in whichever way it takes. It doesn't matter how amazing the dream is. What's important is the message that it brings and how it changes your life and what you do. Like I said, that's your app. You know, that's your app to the spirit world, is your dreams that can really help you on your way. So just start to dissect them and work with them, and don't worry about what they do.
Up on the board when we came in, there was a statement about the dream is dreaming me.
Yeah, that's a Bushman saying. Yeah, there's a dream dreaming me. Yeah, and there is, you know, there's this one. We must remember we only come here to dream. We only come here to sleep. It is not true that we come here to live. Now that's his reality, because it's the same thing, and your dream will live out your reality depending on what you dream and how you interpret it. And you can create that reality in the imaginal realm as well for yourself in awake time.